Have you thought about the emotions that you may feel when you separate from service? Have you given it some thought about emotionally? Like I know that you're ready, you made up your mind, and for some of you, you may have already separated service, and these emotions came up and you weren't sure what they were. Well, they might have been grief. Hey, ladies, I'm Lazandra, and on this channel, I discuss with Black women who are in senior leadership in public sector, gaining and curating and kind of navigating support for yourself while you're in your role. We also discuss separation from service and life on a pension. What is life after the public sector? I retired from the public sector on my 55th birthday in 2021. Haven't looked back. And I really want to share my journey with you. I spent 20 plus years in the public sector working at various management positions of authority while in the public sector, and I worked at various levels of government, and I retired as an executive director. And this space is really for you. It was a space that I needed when I was in my role, really like the space, like how do I create space and curate some safety and things that I needed for myself while I was in my role. And so that's why I'm here. You'll hear practical tips, and then also my journey, because I want you to know what's possible for you and what life is like after public sector and life on a pension and all the other things that I'm doing while being retired from the public sector. One of the emotions that I didn't recognize right away was grief. See, this will just be a vulnerable moment for me because I really haven't written down my bullet points for this one like I normally do. I just was these feelings was coming up for me, like how I felt when I left. And I thought I'd share that so that if you feel them or felt them and you didn't recognize them as grief, then it may not have been grief, but it's something to think about because no one told me that I would feel grief. I would feel grief from separating from a job that I wanted to separate from. Who knew? And I'm very familiar with grief, unfortunately, because I've seen it so much in my family. Like I've been the person who's helped as people were passing over or passed on, help navigate and help my family navigate grief. My grandmother passed away I'll say 1999. That was my dad. My dad passed away in 1999, and that was my first time of this really big feeling around grief. But my grandmother in 2019, and then my mom in 2022. And so if you're looking and listening at the dates, so my mom was put on hospice in 2021. And actually, no, sorry. She was put on hospice in 2022. I'm getting my dates. I told you I didn't write no notes because it's still raw for me. It's still raw for me because sometimes I go, oh, my mom passed last year. No, we're in 2024. Last year was 2023. She passed in 2022. But she was put on hospice in 2021. And I hadn't experienced obviously grief at that time, but I knew what it was like from before. And so when I started having these emotions and feeling like, oh my goodness, what is going on with me? I started to recognize that it felt similar to loss that I have experienced when I'm losing somebody. That grief is not just the loss of someone, it's also the loss of something. And sometimes we don't recognize it and think about it. you feel lost even if it's something that you did. I applied for my retirement. And in case you didn't know, yes, you have to apply to retire through your retirement systems. I did that and I still experienced loss. I have worked since I was 16. And many of us have been working that long for a very long time. And so to separate that is feels like a loss. Like, what do I do now? Because many of us, and it's sometimes hard not to, we define ourselves partly about what we do in our career. And especially you in your senior leadership role, all that it took for you to get to this role, all the things that you had to do and deal with as a woman, as a black woman, as a woman in senior leadership. I know it's been a lot to get there. And even with all the stuff, maybe you had a great time, because I'm not assuming that it's just been hard for you. Whether it was hard or not, or in between, or has its moments like most things do in life, even if it was bad, you still may experience grief. If it was great, you still may experience grief. So it's just me to just nudge you and say, this could happen, and to be mindful of it if you start having these feelings that come up for you and you're not quite sure, like, why am I feeling this way? Did I make a good decision? I don't know if I made a good decision. I was feeling a great loss, like I didn't have a purpose, and what was I going to do next, even though I knew what I was going to do next, So just recognize some of the emotions may be grief emotions. I was doing grief counseling. I did grief counseling when my grandmother passed, and then when my mom did pass away last February, forgetting 2022, because it's been 2 years. This month, it's been 2 years. I was like, wait, I'm feeling a little bit of grief around this loss, and so it was helpful for me. So that could come up for you. Grief looks different for different people. I'm not here to say I'm an expert on grief and the grief emotions. I just want you to recognize that you might feel grief. I'm not here as a doctor or a psychologist or a social worker to tell you what all the things of grief look like, because everyone experiences grief differently. I just want you to have an awareness that a grief emotion, you may experience grief from leaving a job, whether it was toxic or wonderful or everything in between. I just want you to be mindful of that. And then again, just do what you need to do for it. Whatever you need to do to recognize and to experience it and to work through it, to create that for yourself. Not here to give you things to do. Maybe in a future video, I'll look up. I just want to share this is one of those my journey and the thing that I went through moments that I said that I talk about, and I just wanted to make you aware that that could happen. And guess what? It may not. That may not. But it could. And so it's just something to be mindful of, because I didn't think about it. But I was like, of course, I've been working since I was 16. I don't work like that anymore. So of course stuff is going to come up for me about my sense of self and who I am. And all this stuff came up. And as I was working through my grief work after my mom passed, I was noticing that it was some similar things, because I did do grief support group when my mother passed. Heavy stuff, right? But it doesn't have to be. Grief is a natural response. Grief is not bad. Grief is a natural response. So it's something that many of us will experience at some point in our life, whether it's somebody or something. It could be grief, and that's my only thing. That was my share for today. I hope that this was helpful to you, and Like I said before, please comment if you've experienced the grief, or if it's come up for you, or you didn't think about it. Please give me a comment. Please like the video if it was helpful, if it was insightful, if you thought about that, or maybe it wasn't grief. You can say, Lazandra, you're completely wrong, but I'm telling you what happened for me. So I can't be wrong about my own experience. I'm telling you what happened for me, and it could happen to you. And finally, please subscribe so you can get the be notified of the next video. So again, comment, like the video, good for the algorithm, people, and please subscribe. And with that, I'll see you on the next video. Take care.